from a handwritten flyer stapled to a telephone pole. It read, "Now hiring archivist needed Lost Lullaby Division." Quiet work. Night hours, $400 a night. Must be able to read sheet music. No humming, no singing. Absolutely no listening twice. It seemed like a prank or an art project, but I was broke, musically literate, and curious enough to call the number. The man on the other end didn't ask for a resume. He just said, "Come in tonight, midnight, no earlier." The address led me to a library I'd never seen before, tucked into the industrial edge of town. It had no name, just a brass plaque by the door with a single word engraved, "Subductions." Inside, the place smelled like mildew and parchment. The walls were lined not with books, but with thousands of sheet music scrolls, each tied with gray string and stamped with dates, some from as far back as 1312. My job was simple. Open each scroll, copy it into a digital archive, and record any notes from the attached index cards. Each scroll was labeled with a title like Cradle Cry Number 7, For the Boy Beneath the Floor, Don't Sing After Sundown, version V. I noticed strange instructions on the cards, things like, "Do not let infants hear this. If whistled, rewind memory." See also Disappearance of St. Basil Orphanage, 1902. The melodies were haunting, fragmented. Sometimes they felt familiar, like I'd heard them in a dream. Some scrolls were burned at the edges, others soaked in wax, and some had stains that looked like blood. The first real incident happened around 3:30 a.m. on my third shift. I opened a scroll titled "She Sang the Ceiling Down." The moment I unrolled it, the lights in the building dimmed, as if something was absorbing the power. The lullaby had only 6 notes. I didn't sing them, but something responded. The sound came from above. The ceiling creaked, loud, deliberate cracks. Then I saw a footprint press into the tiles above me. Then another. Pacing back and forth, I sealed the scroll and shoved it back into its tube. The footprints vanished. The lights returned. After that night, the rules changed. A new instruction was taped to my desk the next shift. If you hear humming, leave. Immediately. I did hear humming. Once. It came from behind the locked vault in the back. Soft, slow, childlike, a lullaby I hadn't cataloged yet. I walked backward out of the building and didn't return until 2 nights later. Eventually, I met the other archivists. They don't speak. They never look up. And I think some of them don't breathe. Their hands are gray. Their fingers tremble. One slid me a scroll that wasn't part of the log. It read, "Do not archive this. This lullaby is aware of being listened to. It will finish itself." I opened it anyway. I shouldn't have. I didn't sing it. I didn't hum it. But it finished in my mind, like it climbed into my thoughts and played its own ending. The next night, my neighbor's baby started crying nonstop. Then her husband vanished. The following evening, I found the scroll in my apartment, the same one I never took home. Just sitting on my pillow, folded perfectly. The lullaby wants to be remembered, and now even as I write this, I hear the tune repeating in my head. I can't sleep, and I'm scared to forget it, because what happens when it finishes again? First time it happened, I figured I just blacked out drunk. I woke up in a dusty motel room with wood-paneled walls, a tube TV playing static, and a Gideon Bible duct-taped shut on the nightstand. My phone was gone. My shoes were wet. There was no sign of forced entry, and the receipt by the lamp said I'd checked in at 2:09 a.m. under the name Sir Edward Glass. That's not my name. The woman at the front desk said I'd paid cash and seemed real quiet but polite. I don't remember any of it. Not the taxi, not the lobby, not handing her a $100 bill. It would have been easy to chalk it up to exhaustion or stress. But then it happened again, and again, and again. Each time, a different motel, always in the middle of nowhere. Always late at night, always with a different name on the receipt. Simon Farrow, Kyle N. Wright, Missy Temple. Names I don't recognize. Sometimes the rooms are pristine. Sometimes they're grimy, damp, stained with water damage. In one, the mirror was covered in bandages. In another, I found a hole in the wall stuffed with human teeth. On the 5th occurrence, I noticed something new, a note taped to the door. It simply read, "Don't forget who you were this time." When I looked in the mirror, my own reflection seemed delayed by half a second. I tried everything, cameras, alarms, even sleeping with my door chained shut. I went 2 weeks without it happening again. Thought maybe it was over. Then I woke up in motel number 6. This one was different. It had no windows. The TV wasn't plugged in, but it played a grainy surveillance feed of me, asleep in the bed. Over and over. From angles the room didn't physically have, there was a knock on the wall, not the door. The wall. I pressed my ear against it. A voice whispered, "You're renting more than the room." I ran. I stole a car. I drove 300 miles and threw my wallet into a river. I didn't sleep for 40 hours, and still I woke up in motel number 7. This time, someone had left clothes out for me. They weren't mine. A uniform with the name tag, Property Retrieval, Sector West. There was a duffel bag by the closet. Inside were 7 motel keys, one for each room I'd stayed in, and a cell phone that only had one video. It was me, standing in front of a camera, saying, "If you're watching this, they've let you reset again, but they're watching closer now. You're on your 7th body. One more and it's permanent." I dropped the phone. It rang a second later. Unknown number. I answered it. A voice, identical to mine, said, "This is your wake-up call. Checkout is at never." The call ended with a scream I still hear when I close my eyes. I haven't gone to sleep in 5 days, but I know I will. And I know when I wake up, it'll be Motel 8, and the room key is already in my pocket. I've lived in this house for 9 years. I know every creaky floorboard, every weird plumbing noise, every shadow the trees throw on the wall during a storm. So when I went down to the basement on Tuesday and saw a door that wasn't there before, I knew something was wrong. It wasn't subtle. This wasn't some hidden crawl space or trapdoor I'd somehow missed for nearly a decade. It was a full-size, black painted door with a brass handle, right there on the far wall where my tool bench used to be. The first thing I thought was break-in, that maybe someone had installed it somehow, or it was a prank. But the thing is, the wall it appeared on is solid concrete. There's nothing behind it but dirt. No foundation gap, no adjoining room, just the door. When I touched the knob, it was ice cold. I didn't open it that first day. Instead, I called my brother, who lives 15 minutes away, told him I needed a second opinion. He came over, we both stood there staring at it. He asked me if I was messing with him. I wasn't. Then we tried to open it. It was locked. But when we both stepped back from it, we heard something from the other side. Not movement, not scratching, breathing, slow, rhythmic, like someone asleep just inches from the other side of the wood. That night, the door wasn't there anymore. The wall was normal again. Concrete. No seams, no handle, just gone. I would have thought I hallucinated the whole thing if my brother hadn't seen it too. We agreed not to talk about it, to forget it, whatever it was. But 2 nights later, I woke up to a sound downstairs. I live alone. I grabbed a flashlight and a hammer and crept to the basement. As I got closer to the bottom of the stairs, I heard it again. The breathing. Not behind the wall this time, in the room. And the door was back. Wide open. There were no hinges, no frame, just blackness beyond it, deeper than anything I've ever seen. No walls, no floor, just a thick ink-like void. I swear I saw something in there. A figure, tall, twisted, like a person unraveling in slow motion. It reached toward me and whispered, "You built this place, now it remembers you." I slammed the door. This time it didn't vanish, it stayed, mocking me. I nailed boards across it, pushed my old washer in front of it, poured cement mix all over the frame. It doesn't matter. Every morning the door is clean, polished, waiting. And now sometimes it opens by itself. Not wide, just an inch, enough to let something crawl through. I started noticing him about 3 weeks ago. It was around 2:30 a.m. I was up late working on a deadline. My desk faces the front window, so I get a clear view of the street. That's when I saw him. A man, maybe in his late 40s, wearing a long beige coat and black slacks, slowly walking backwards past my house. Perfectly straight posture, head tilted slightly upward, arms held rigid at his sides, his feet moved like they'd rehearsed every step 1,000 times. No one else on the street, just him, moonlight stretching his silhouette across the pavement. I thought it was weird, sure, but not terrifying. Maybe just a guy with a strange ritual or some eccentric disorder. But then it kept happening. Every night. Same time, same man, same clothes. Always backwards. And always past my house. He doesn't look around. Doesn't hesitate. Just walks in reverse down the sidewalk through the cone of my porch light and into the dark. Last week, I tried to film him. I set up my phone on a tripod in the window. But when I checked the footage the next morning, he wasn't there. Everything else showed up fine. The wind blowing the trees, a raccoon scurrying across the street. But the moment he should have appeared, the screen glitched. Froze for exactly 16 seconds, then resumed like nothing had happened. Last night, I worked up the courage to go outside. I waited in the dark behind my fence. When I heard the first click of his backward steps on the sidewalk, I peeked out. He passed my driveway and stopped. Still walking backwards, he slowly turned his head, not his body, toward me. I saw his face for the first time. It was blank. Like, actually blank. No eyes, no mouth, smooth, pale skin where his features should be. Yet somehow, I could feel him smiling. Then he took a single backward step toward me. I bolted inside, locked every door, turned off every light, but I could still hear him out there. His footsteps tapping in slow retreat down the street. Tonight I was going to leave, drive anywhere else, but when I opened my front door, my street was gone. Just gone. In its place was a long hallway of red carpet and flickering lights, stretching far beyond what should be possible. And at the end of it, I could hear his shoes, getting louder. He's not outside anymore. He's coming through my house. Ready for... I don't know how I got there. I was just trying to get somewhere else. After an exhausting overnight drive through the back roads of Arizona, I was ready to collapse. I must have nodded off for a second, because when I opened my eyes, the road ahead wasn't the one I'd been following. The desert was gone. The stars were gone. The signs were different. I was surrounded by towering pine trees that shouldn't have been there. The road narrowed until it led into a town I'd never heard of, St. Vincent's Hollow. Population, 123. Everything about it felt like an old photograph. The buildings leaned a little too far. The windows looked hand-blown. People walked the streets slowly, as if rehearsing their movements. No phones, no music, just the faint sound of wind through empty swings. I checked into a place called Hollow Pines Inn, a sagging little motel with a flickering sign and a clerk who barely moved. She handed me a metal key and said, "Try not to blink too much." I thought I misheard her. I passed out hard. But when I woke up the next morning, everything had changed. Same room, different wallpaper. The motel office had become a laundromat. The streets were laid out differently. Buildings had swapped places. And the sky, there was no sun. Just a dull gray glow like you'd see in a dream right before waking up. The people weren't the same. Their clothes were decades older. Their eyes were more glassy. They didn't speak to me. Some had bandages. Some walked with jerky, unnatural motion like puppets in a looped performance. Every time I blinked, something else changed. The statue in the park? First it was a soldier, then a child, then just a black obelisk with names scratched into it. One of them was mine. I tried to leave. No matter which direction I drove, the road fed me back into the center of town. I'd passed the same house 3 times, and each time the mailbox outside it had a different name. I tried walking. Same result. I ended up outside the inn again, even after hiking for hours into the woods. The 4th morning, I woke up in a hospital bed instead of the motel. My arm was hooked to an IV. I yanked it out and stumbled into the hallway, which led straight back to the motel lobby. The woman behind the counter hadn't moved. "Day 4, she said softly. "Not everyone makes it this far." I screamed at her, begged her to tell me how to get out. Her only response? "Keep your eyes open. Don't blink. If the town notices you're not one of them, it'll start changing you back." Back into what? That night, I watched myself in the mirror as long as I could. My skin didn't feel like mine anymore. My teeth were too even. Too white. My face was losing detail like it had been photocopied too many times. Now, every time I blink, I hear a voice whispering from inside my ear, "Don't worry, you'll fit in soon." I haven't blinked in 3 days. I don't think I have eyelids anymore. I found a locked door in my apartment that doesn't show up on the floor plan. I moved into my apartment in the middle of winter. The place seemed perfect. Cheap rent, good location, quiet neighbors. I wasn't expecting anything strange, but then I noticed something off the first night I stayed there. I'd already unpacked most of my things and was settling into bed when I heard it. The soft thud of something heavy hitting the wall. It came from the hallway outside my bedroom, just beyond the door. At first, I thought it was just the pipes, or maybe the building settling. But then it happened again, and again. A dull thud like something was gently knocking at my door. I opened it. Nothing. The hallway was empty, just the usual dim light from the overhead bulb. I shrugged it off, but the next few days felt wrong. Every time I walked through the apartment, I'd get this nagging feeling, like I was being watched. It was subtle, but it was there, like there was an invisible presence lurking just out of sight. Then came the door. It was a small door, tucked away at the very end of the hallway. I hadn't noticed it when I first moved in. The apartment's floor plan didn't show it, and there was nothing on the walls to indicate it was there. It was hidden in plain sight. And when I looked closer, I saw that it was locked. I couldn't stop staring at it. There was nothing unusual about the door, except for the fact that it wasn't on any floor plans I'd been given. It was a regular wooden door with a brass knob, a little worn, but in decent shape. But it shouldn't have been there. It didn't make sense. I tried to ask my landlord about it, but he looked at me like I was crazy when I mentioned it. "What door?" he asked. "There's no door there." But there it was, clear as day. I even pulled out the floor plan again. No door, just the wall where it should have been. I felt like I was losing my mind. But the more I thought about it, the more I had to know what was behind it. So one night, I made up my mind. I was going to open it. I couldn't explain why I felt so drawn to it. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the sense of unease that had been creeping up on me since I'd moved in. But when I approached it, I felt something that made my skin crawl. A coldness, like the air around the door was different from the rest of the hallway. The lock was simple, just a rusted keyhole. I didn't have a key, but the lock looked old enough that I might be able to force it open. I pulled out a butter knife and started working at it. To my surprise, the lock gave way after only a few minutes of prying. My heart was racing as I turned the knob. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow stairwell leading down into darkness. I hesitated for a moment, but then I stepped inside. The stairs were steep and the air smelled damp. The whole space felt like it hadn't been touched in years. I descended, the sound of my footsteps echoing off the walls. The deeper I went, the colder it got, until the temperature felt like I was standing in a freezer. At the bottom of the stairs was a door. This one was completely solid, no window, just an old iron handle. I reached for it, but the instant I touched the handle, the entire building seemed to shudder. The light flickered and went out. I was plunged into darkness. I panicked and tried to run back up the stairs, but the door at the top, the one I had just opened, was gone. There was no door, just a blank wall. I screamed. My voice echoed in the dark, but there was no answer. I turned back to the iron door. I had to know what was behind it. I grasped the handle and turned it. The door opened into a small, dimly lit room. It was nothing special, just a bare concrete floor, some old boxes, and a single chair in the corner. But what caught my attention was the wall opposite me. It was covered in writing, scribbled in red, but too faded to read clearly. I stepped forward, leaning in to make out the words. But then behind me I heard something shift. I turned around quickly, but there was nothing there. Just the darkness closing in, the sound of my own breath, and the unmistakable feeling that something had been waiting for me. I haven't touched the door since. I haven't even looked at it. The hallway still feels colder when I walk past, and every night, just as I'm about to fall asleep, I hear it. A faint scratching sound, like nails running down the wall. And when I open my eyes, I'm sure I see something moving in the shadows at the end of the hall. It's waiting, and so am I.